back to what is hopefully the last bit of the McCrum's Motorcycles Obsession Engineering Aprilia 660 race preparation. It needs to be the last bit because tomorrow we're on track. So, we haven't actually got too much left to do. Obviously I need to fit a screen, and then we've got a load of little detail jobs, but nothing too major, hopefully. And we are meant to be on the dyno this afternoon. We're just going to give it a bit of a run, and we have got a different set of bell mounts to try on it, a little bit of development work, and then we'll be straight up to Oliver's mount and hopefully ready to race. One of the little finish off jobs we did last night was fit what is in effect now our water header tank, which is an old brake fluid bottle, because as much as a nice see-through bottle would be good, don't currently have one. So that's mounted in there. It is actually stuck into the inside of the fairing panel, but the cable ties for a bit of extra security, and we have the original hose running down from the radiator to it. Now, that doesn't really actually have to hold very much, because all you need is maybe just enough space for a little bit of water to blow out if the bike gets really hot, and then allow it to suck it back up later. So that's all about sorted. We do have to flush the cooling system a couple of times a day with water, so we've got all that clear. We need to fit a shark fin. We do need to actually fit the seat unit and bits again. Yeah, we're into detailing jobs now. As part of the racing regulations, we have to have a tow guard, and this sits under the swinging arm sort of here-ish, so that if you fall off or do anything wrong, you can't get fingers and toes and stuff trapped in the bottom chainring where it goes into the sprocket. So that obviously needs mounting to there. What we have to mount it, it comes with this little sort of angle bracket. So the guard screws into this side, and the other side we need to put into the bottom of the swinging arm, which means we need 2 holes. So we've already marked the holes where I'm going to drill it, so I'm going to hit them with the centre punch, drill the holes out, and then if the swinging arm is relatively thick material, I'll just tap straight into these holes. If it's fairly thin, we'll put riv nuts in here, and then we can bolt into the riv nuts. That's the holes that are drilled in the swinging arm, up there and there, and luckily there's quite a lot of material in the bottom of the swinging arm. So what I can do now is get to my tap on my tap wrench and just tap straight into the swinging arm. You'll like the tap wrench, I made that when I was an apprentice. And that means it's getting quite old. Right, that's the holes tapped. Hopefully you can just about see the threads in there. So the next thing I can do is mount that onto there, mount the bracket on with the bolts they supply with it, and then bolt the shark fin on. It really is quite simple. I'm going to make sure I Loctite all these screws because they're not very long screws and we do not want them falling out. There we go, as if by magic the shark fin is fitted. What you want when you're fitting them is you don't want to be able to see any of the sprocket obviously in front, and you don't want to be able to see the gap behind it. So that's absolutely tickety-boo, and if we move the wheel all the way back or all the way forward, we should still be covered. That was actually a relatively quick job. I suspect cleaning the chain in a bit will actually take longer than fitting the chain guard. Next job on the list was to modify the lock stops, because as standard this bike has a lot of steering lock for riding around car parks and that sort of thing. So what we've done is just made at these nylon spacers so that we've taken about 8mm off each side of the lock stops. So they're much better there, just literally a machined up bit of nylon popped over the top of the standard lock stop and silicone adhesive in place, and they work surprisingly well. Right, so that's it, another job ticked off the list. Eric, what's next? Now that we're rattling through the list, we're on to the finer details. So Eric is about to fit the screen into here. Now the screen is actually pre-drilled, so what we're going to do is sort of line it up on the inside of the fairing, put some little pen marks on the inside where the holes are, and hopefully they'll line up somewhere near the original sort of holes that are on there. And then we're just going to drill through, put some bolts in, fairly straightforward. Rob, who is weekend pit crew, is turned up, so he's busying away getting the spare ZXR 750 numbered up. And one day I might even finish that R1. It's been dragging on a while, hasn't it? While Eric's over there busying himself trying not to break his screen and Rob's doing stickers and things on the ZXR in the corner, I actually get a fun little job. I say fun, I actually get to run a motorbike because we need to flush the coolant system. So we've drained most of the antifreeze out of it, filled it up with water, and I'm just going to run it for a little bit so it mixes everything around, and then we'll dump it out and we'll do that 2 or 3 times until there's no antifreeze left in it. Now, there's no point just pouring fluid in and draining it back out, because the stuff that's sort of sat up in the cylinder head and places like that, we're not actually going to get rid of it. So the only way to do it is to make some noise. Right, I've run the bike for a little bit just to get the water and the coolant to mix so that we're diluting everything down. And normally at this point you'd take the bolt out of the bottom of the water pump and drain everything out. But the bolt at the bottom of the water pump on this isn't actually a drain. So what I'm actually doing is taking this lowest pipe off. We'll always be left with a little bit of fluid in the radiator, and there's always a bit in the engine. But if we do it a few times, we will dilute it that much down, there won't really be any antifreeze left. We are worryingly close to putting the bodywork on for the final time. When we did a little bit more actual checking with our eyes open, there is a drain plug out the bottom of the water pump after all. So yes, we have used that. Ignore the bit we said earlier. So we flushed all the water through. That's all done. We've got a shark fin. We've got a shock. We've got rear sets. The reg rec's been moved. The bodywork's been trial fitted. The brakes have all been done with new lines, so everything's legal. We've even taken the pillion peg off there. There's a rain light. There's a little piece of carbon fibre I've just cut up and fitted under there so we don't get all the water thrown over the battery and bits. Rob, are we looking ready?
No.
Excellent, he's about right actually. So what we need to do next is put the bodywork back on it and think about going to the dyno with it.
Slightly concerned, what's going to happen?
Rob's getting a little bit concerned because I will admit there's been a few last little detailed jobs. Then I have been getting a little bit annoyed. I've not really had enough sleep the last few days.
Bottom lip's been hanging out.
And Rob's getting a little bit annoyed because he made one comment that, you know, normally we'd just have a laugh and a joke, and I just sort of pointed and stared, and there was a stony silence, and then Rob's a bit concerned that I might kick him in the nuts.
Yeah, I'm going to get him nuts. Yeah. I'm ready. Fight you.
Ooh, you tinker. The fairing's back on it. We've been through everything. We've given it a little bit of a clean. We're not putting the seat unit on because when we go to the dyno, we've actually got some different bell mouths to try, and we need the airbox off of that, and the seat would stop us. But it wanted the fairing on because we had to mount these little bits up here so that we actually had it mounted properly. We have got the screen. Eric, why isn't the screen in it?
Screen's here.
It's there somewhere.
Okay. Because we haven't fitted it.
Chance bike's ready.
Yeah, it's all getting a little bit stressy, but my classic superbike's ready. The second classic superbike for Chad to ride, or if he goes, you know, a little bit camp, then Eric will ride it. The twin is basically ready to go to the dyno now. Is everybody happy, or is everybody tired and stressed? I'm tired and stressed.
I'm happy.
Eric's happy.
I'm always happy.
You're only happy because you're further away from me and I can't reach you to kick you in the nuts.
Fight you.
Right. I think it's about ready to race. The footrests are in a reasonable position for starters. The lever positions I've guessed at and they feel pretty good to me. It's almost like we've done this sort of thing before. The brakes actually work. Goes up and down a little bit. I particularly like this big screen. The only slight problem is I'm not actually riding it. Eric's a lucky little bugger. This is it, a man getting used to his new office. Levers feel alright?
Yeah. At the moment, in stationary position, yeah, spot on. Just once you get moving around a little bit, you might need a little bit of fine adjustment, but as a basic setting, spot on.
Now that we actually have a complete bike with wings and everything, we thought it'd be a reasonable time to actually weigh it. So I've made sure the tank is empty of fuel, barring the last probably half a litre or so, and we've got a pair of kitchen scales under it. So we're going to give them a little nudge to turn them on, and we're going to see how much the little baby Aprilia weighs. I reckon it'll be ever so slightly heavier than Eric. Holding the bike as upright as possible, so we've barely got any weight on it. What have we got at the back?
74.0 at the rear.
74.0, and I'll just have to reset this one at the front.
Just roll it forward a little bit, just. 86.7.
86.7. We need to write this down. Get your calculator out, Rob.
Calculator out, that'd be easier, wouldn't it?
So it's ready to go in the van with about 5 minutes to spare so we can get to the dyno on time. It has been a little bit hectic, but we have a complete motorbike, and doesn't it look cool? I think this thing's going to be an absolute rave to race. Yeah, excellent job by everybody involved. Mostly me, obviously. Right, let's get up to the dyno, and then when we get to the paddock tonight, we'll put some numbers on it and we'll go and race it. Right, so some interesting things from the sort of initial dyno runs on the bike. These are like the peak horsepower figures, and we're basically touching 90 horsepower, but if we look on the air-fuel ratio, we're really, really rich, where you'd really want a 12.5, 13 to 1 on the air-fuel ratio down here, where it's sort of between 11 and 11.5, so it's really, really rich, which makes it very safe. So, you know, it's a sensible thing that Aprilia, the aquapovic map has been made very, very safe, so even if you had, I'd imagine, American spec fuel, it'd be alright, but with our fuel, it's, you know, too safe really. So we've got 90 horsepower at the top, which for a standard twin, ain't bad going at all really, but interestingly, this red line is about 50% throttle, and it's still doing 82.5 horsepower. Right then, now that we have a sort of base reading off the little Aprilia, the next thing to do is to fit some different bell mouths, some slightly shorter stacks on it, and see if they make a difference. They are supposed to help them a little bit. So what I have to do first is whip off the seat pad, the actual seat fairing, take the fuel tank off, and then just lift the top of the airbox off, and in we go and change the bell mouths. Hopefully, fairly straightforward. Right, with the seat unit and the tank off, it's just a case of lifting the airbox top off. So just a load of Phillips screws around there. I'll disconnect the sort of inlet temperature or pressure sensor, literally whip that off, and I should be able to get to the throttle bodies, which should be fairly easy to take off. Right, while Pete's in the background revving a RS660, I'm doing bell mouths. So these are the standard ones, as you can see. They're nice and smooth and sort of standard as you'd expect. And these are the supposedly trick. They're actually 3D printed, come from American jobbies. Interesting, we are told that these fit the opposite way round to these as well. So the short one that side and that side. Right, so I'm going to unscrew these, screw the new ones down, put it back on the dyno and see if it makes any more power. So this is a bit of a comparison. This is the long original and this is the long new one. And you can see the difference in height. That should give us better top end airflow, but might lose a little bit down the bottom. We'll have to wait and see. So that's the bell mouths fitted in there. Turns out with a little lump here, you can't actually fit them the wrong way round, so that is why they are fitted short bell on that side. Right then, so the blue line is with the standard bell mouths and the red line is with the little short bell mouths. And actually, okay, peak horsepower we've gained 2.5 horsepower up to sort of 92 and a bit horse. But we're losing quite a bit here at sort of 8,000 RPM, we're nearly 10 horsepower down. And we're losing a bit up here as well. So arguably on track, the standard bell mouths are probably actually a little bit better. So it might be interesting to actually sort of get Eric to ride, and then we can even swap them over because they're not a long job, and see if you can actually feel the difference. On track it may not be massively noticeable, but I actually think, and Pete agrees, that the blue line being smoother will actually be better on track. Thank you for watching the McCrum's Motorcycles RS660 build, and join us again for the Oliver's Mount review to see how the little Aprilia performed.